Continuing on with the Patreon Commission reviews for a series of 70s and 80s comedies. And we're at Police Academy. I have nothing clever to do as an intro because there's nothing clever about this movie. This this hurt to watch. This was painful. I hated this. It's been a while since I've slogged through a comedy I could not stand. But holy crap, this is bad. How the hell were there 8 of these and 2 TVs? Actually, never mind. I know how there were a lot. It's cheap and lazy. It's cops, so it's uniforms and costumes and props and locations that are really easy to get. It's stock material for a lot of studios. So like this is easy to produce. It's mostly character actors, and the script clearly had no effort put into it. There's no directorial flair. These were cheap to crank out. So I get why so many of them were made. They were cheap. How did people keep going to these? Oh. And let me say this. I'm actually really glad I watched Revenge of the Nerds first, because as distinct and quite large in some cases as some of the problems with that movie were, I did find a lot more good in it than I was expecting to. I've got almost nothing on this. I've got like a handful of tiny things that like got a chuckle out of me or kind of worked or maybe could have worked in a more competent scenario. But like I've got almost nothing good to say about this. This is awful. And I'll try and make a certain amount of allowance for the fact that humor is incredibly subjective. I appreciate that and I understand that. That having been said, even taking into account the type of humor that this is, which again, I think maps on very cleanly to Revenge of the Nerds, that had actual effort and craft put into it. This has none. So even taking into account the kind of humor that it is, it's a bad version of that. So, like, even accounting for taste, I don't get it. Okay. What are we dealing with? For people younger than me, which I know is most of my audience, what even is this? So forget the fact that this became a franchise. We're only dealing with this one movie. Thank goodness. So the premise is that the mayor in this city, I think the city goes unnamed. I can't remember. I don't think it is ever named. But the mayor decides to lift all of the standard restrictions for people to apply to become police officers. Lifts the restriction on age, on weight, on but yeah, just all of them. They're all gone. So anybody can apply. And obviously the established cops absolutely hate that. And in one of the few things that like seemed, oh, okay, well this maybe gets something, but then making it clear later, no, it doesn't get anything. It does establish very early on that we have the chief of police who gives the commandant running the titular police academy, basically commands to make this really overly harsh on these cadets so as many of them quit as possible because these are the wrong kind of people. And he makes it very clear who he thinks is the wrong kind of people. He says like they're the wrong color, they're the wrong gender, like there's the wrong people. So it's very clear. It basically establishes right off the bat, okay, so the police establishment as it exists, sexist, racist, not good. Okay, but then you quickly realize, oh, our heroes are not a lot better, which I suppose brings us to the main hero of this guy named Mahoney, who basically just has he's played by Steven Guttenberg. He's a standard 80s era jackass. I don't know what it was about the 80s and having characters like this that we are meant to find endearing. These people who are just sadistic pricks, to be honest. They just do mean stuff, but like they do it with a wink and a smile and a snarky line, and somehow that's endearing. Like, no, you're an asshole. So that's Mahoney. And so like he keeps getting into trouble, but he's not a friend. He's got a connection with a police captain because of who his dad was. And the police captain is like, okay, this is the deal. For me to not send you to the county jail and stop covering for you, you go through the police academy. And even if you don't become a cop at the end, you do the whole thing. And so he goes in. He wants to get kicked out, but the instructions from the chief were, don't kick anyone out because then it's too obvious. Find a way to weed them out, make them quit. So Mahoney can't quit because then he'll be dropped in the county jail. But the people above him who cannot stand him no matter what he does, and he does a lot, they also can't just get rid of him. So that's the dilemma. Mahoney never changes at any point. He is an asshole from minute one, and somehow it is meant to be charming. We are meant to find it charming when he pervs on a woman cadet played by Kim Cattrall, who, I don't know if I missed a scene. I felt like there was a point where 2 pages turned over at once. It went from him like just flatly perving on her, and suddenly they were flirty, and then they were like all making out. Like, what? When did this happen? Like, actually, honestly, pretty much all the characters in this are ciphers. I'm not even going to call them stereotypes. The characters in Revenge of the Nerds were stereotypes. But you know what? They may have been stereotypical characters, but they were characters. The characters, quote unquote, in this, I know nothing about so many of them. There's a character of Hooks, who's this incredibly soft-spoken black woman. That's it. That's literally it. I can tell you nothing else about her. I don't know why she's there. I don't know why she wants to become a cop. I find out nothing about her. Zip. Zero. Zilch. We do kind of find out why Kim Cattrall wants to be there, because she's like from this hoity-toity family, but that never comes up again after her initial introductions. It impacts absolutely nothing. There's this nerd character who I can't even remember the name of, and he kept showing up later in the movie. I'm like, oh, I forgot he was even freaking in this. There's the fat guy who is, yes, made fun of for being the fat guy. One of the few, because I'm just going to spoil the crap out of this. There's practically no plot, so it doesn't matter anyway. One of the few entertaining and cathartic scenes was seeing Barbara, Leslie Barbara is the character's name, because, yeah, let's give him 2 traditionally women's names for first and last name, because why not? He is getting beaten up and bullied by the classic 80s bullies that just run rampant all over the place at the start of it. And then he's like, I'm going to become a cop. And then later on, he beats all of them up. But like by hand, he like bests them in a fight. Not like a super well choreographed one, but it's just satisfying to see. And it's also satisfying to see a heavier guy just throw down like that. That was one of 2 moments that got a genuine smile out of me. The other one being at the very end, because there's a character of Hightower who's just a really big black guy. That's almost his only character trait. The other one is he was a florist, but got bored with it. And that's kind of funny as a visual. That's kind of it, though. So there is a moment at the very end with him where he gets awarded a medal and he gets told, you're expected to say a few words. He goes up to the podium in front of the mic and just goes, thanks, and walks away. That was good. That had a punchiness that the movie overall lacks. So to compare it to something other than Revenge of the Nerds, to compare it to, say, Airplane, and one of the things about Airplane is that while there was a story and a narrative, and there were some jokes that were taken that had more time set up, while going across that setup to get to whatever the punchline they were setting up was, they would be doing other smaller individual jokes along the way so you weren't getting bored waiting for the more obvious bigger jokes to be set up and delivered. This does not have that. This only has the big jokes that take forever to get set up. It takes so long. They drag out these setups. There's this entire extended sequence, this entire thing with a riot getting started that seems to exist for little reason other than initially just to do a we went to the wrong part of town joke. And then it goes into the forced climax, which is also really weird. There's this. So first of all, just the fact that like a riot starts for, well, it's kind of the fault of one of the new, I'm not going to make this argument, but you could make an argument and have evidence for it that the movie actually backs up the idea that the wrong kind of people being cops is actually a problem. There's a couple of scenes in this, including the climax, that kind of back that up. back up that notion, at least in part. So this thing can't even stick by its own freaking principles. What it's trying to be, it is trying to be a Misfits movie in the vein of Animal House, Revenge of the Nerds, etc. It's a group of misfits who aren't there, but you root for them. They're underdogs. Like, don't you want to see them succeed? No! No! I know almost nothing about any of them. Even the few who, like, okay, like, I guess you're not the worst, but I still don't get you. Like, there's this guy who, you know, he's just the Latin lover stereotype. He just shows up with the accent and he gets all the women. And I'm like, am I missing a joke here? Except no, that literally is the joke, because we find out later that he's faking the accent to get women. And we see it work the entire way through the movie. So that's the entire joke of this character. He shows up repeatedly, every scene. Oh, all these women. I'm not even going to do the fake accent that he did, but like, all these women, oh, they're all over me. And the entire joke is just that they're there for the accent. That's it. That is the same joke every single time he does literally anything. So he's freaking pointless. I also have no clue why he wants to be a cop either. You've got Michael Winslow, who does the sound effects. Like, he's great insofar as he's entertaining and fun, and I like what he's able to do, and he's a fun presence. I also don't really get why he wants to be a cop either. And he's another one who I would forget he's in the movie, because he'd pop up for like a little one-off for him to do his imitating noises shtick, and I'd kind of go like, oh yeah, and then it would end and he'd be gone for the next frickin' forever. Okay, here's another comparison I'm going to make to Revenge of the Nerds. Revenge of the Nerds had a completely unnecessary and has aged very poorly, exploitative, misogynistic scene or series of scenes where the nerds set up these cameras in the sorority so that they can spy on the sorority girls naked. It's gross and I don't like it, but there is some story aspects out of it. The characters bond over doing this, including the gay member of that fraternity who like helps them. He's not gonna watch once they're set up, but he's like, nah, I'll help you. You know, there's a sense of bonding. There's a sense of getting like a feel for these characters through the actions they're taking. Like, it's still unnecessary and shouldn't be there, but there is at least that. And the reason I point that out is because here you literally just have a camera pan across a bunch of open windows at the woman's dorm at the police academy to show us a bunch of naked women. Yes, at the very end, Mahoney's spying on them, but that nothing comes of that. There's no relevance to that. It is literal, like, as much as in Revenge of the Nerds, that whole thing was an excuse to show naked women. This, they don't even have the decency to have the veneer of an excuse. They don't even bother with an excuse. Just like, and here's all the nudity for this scene. And then later on, like a beach party scene, like, and let's linger on all these women's butts in bikinis. Why? Shut up. We're lingering on these butts in bikinis. And now these women are going to take their tops off. Why? Nope. They're just going to take, they don't even have the respect for my intelligence to give the surface level of a rationalization for why this is happening. That's what I mean by this is lazy as hell. Whatever charm there could have been in this, from the notion of the misfits, of the people who you wouldn't normally think of being suited for positions of authority, proving themselves, like, none of it's here. First of all, there's way too many of this. Thing would have benefited from either having way more plot or way less. And what I mean by that is either they could have cut the cast about in half and actually focused on these people so we get to know them as characters and not just as ciphers. Because again, they're not even stereotypes. They're blank freaking slates with maybe 1-2 character traits at most. That's not even enough to be a freaking stereotype. So there's way too many of them. They pop up sporadically. They don't have very much bond with each other. There were a few points I'm like, wait a minute, when did those two develop a rapport? And not just with Kim Cattrall and Steve Guttenberg. Like, repeatedly, I kept wondering, like, wait, when would they have ever established a thing? Ever. So, like, that across the board. So either you cut a whole bunch of them, actually focus in on these people, give us fully blown characters and focus on the plot and the narrative more, Or you just admit that this is an excuse for a series of more or less isolated, jokey, practically sketch-level scenes and drop more of the overarching plot and don't try and act like your main character had an arc when he freaking didn't. It tries to ride the line, but it either needed to actually focus up and pay attention to what it was doing, in which case it needed to drop a lot of the dead weight, which is a lot of the movie, or it needed to just embrace the fact that this is all just an excuse for absurdity and just freaking lean into that and use the advantage to do legitimately absurd stuff. Like, again, something like Airplane did. It is too absurd to be taken as an actual story, but it's not absurd enough to go into the bonkers realm of something like Airplane. Again, it's this milquetoast lazy. It's so freaking lazy and homophobic. Really homophobic. I really, like, I know, 80s comedies, a lot of them are homophobic. No, again, I'll point to Revenge of the Nerds. They had a gay character, treated him pretty respectfully. Here, oh, okay. So at first, when the initial sort of gay stuff started creeping in, I was like, well, this isn't so bad because, like, Mahoney misdirects a couple of jackass cadets to they're trying to infiltrate the party of, like, the characters we're supposed to like, but are either jackasses or we don't know them at all. And he misdirects them to a gay bar. And so, like, that was okay. Then there's the podium scene. Okay, I'm going to go through this really quickly. For stupid reasons that don't really make sense. There is a hooker brought to the academy. And I dropped my glasses. And and Mahoney's trying to get rid of her, and through stupid, convoluted nonsense, she ends up under the podium in, like, this presentation hall when the commandant comes in to like, give a presentation. Now, Mahoney hides down in there with her because, you know, neither of them are supposed to be there. And the commandant gets up in front of the podium to give a speech, and the prostitute proceeds to unzip his pants and fillet him. He apparently, at no point, glances down or object. Like, this man's married. We see his wife early on. He just, it's so, like, this painful extended joke of he's clearly getting head while giving this presentation. And then at the end, you know, he walks away and he glances back, and Steve Guttenberg's character, Mahoney, sticks his head out. And then the dude kind of freaks out a bit. And later on, when he sees Mahoney making out with someone, he's like, "You men, stop that," until he realizes Mahoney's making out with Kim Cattrall. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's okay then." So clearly the problem was not, oh, you're making out with a fellow cadet, don't canoodle. It's, oh, thank God you're not gay. And also, Mahoney drops the F slur very casually. It's real bad. Oh God, it's so bad. And it's a totally random thing. The ending villain they pull out of their ass, I think they have an implication that he's either indigenous or, like, is presenting as if he is, because between this necklace and this feather in his beanie that they had, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I don't know. I don't know any of this. I don't know. Why does this exist? Why was this successful? Why was I asked to watch it? Oh, none of the other comedies I've been asked to watch hurt me like this freaking hurt. Oh, God. Have you seen this? I hope not. Don't if you haven't. But whatever your thoughts are on either what I've said or if you've seen this piece of garbage, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. Enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe, and all of that. Thank goodness I was able to watch this with somebody else, because watching this alone would have just been torture. Holy crap. I try to take a relaxed attitude around here, but just come on back next time you need a break. Ah! Oh. Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfola, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Fare Forit, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Jen on Decade808, Becky Sparks, Fernabulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Bluhuvian, Pau Barabajago, and Mara G. Thank you for your support and for keeping me and these guys fed. What are you doing?